What's a job you'd never do no matter how much they paid you? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. No matter how much they paid is going to cover a whole lot of things for me. I can think up some real big numbers. Though not all. Those divers that swam underwater through a cave system to rescue kids, I'd rather cut off my legs. Story 2. I was a lifeguard for a summer, and after seeing people die, I won't ever go back there, even for a paycheck I forgot. Fucks you up when a kid drowns and the parents are screaming in the water park while they zip the body up. Someone was gross enough to be trying to take pictures with their cell phone like it was a spectacle. It really changed my opinions on the average human. Everyone wanted videos and pictures while family members were grieving. I've never seen humanity the same since that day. Story 3. Telemarketing. I'd work in a rendering plant, a slaughterhouse, unclog septic systems, work in a field all day, picking veges. I will never do a job that requires talking on the phone and getting money ever again. Story 4. I'm sure there's something, but I'm not thinking of it. Mainly because there's no limits to this question. If I'll get paid $1 an hour, I'll do damned near anything for an hour or two, then quit. Raise that to even more obscene numbers? Yay, my morality is for sale. I'm not even going to pretend otherwise. Story 5. Animal euthanasia technician at shelters. Was offered triple my current salary, but I'm already crying thinking about it. I volunteer at shelters and can barely handle seeing the sick ones, let alone being the one to put them down. Some jobs just cost too much emotionally. Story 6. Law enforcement of any kind. Working on an oil rig. The dudes who fish on Deadliest Catch, Rescue Diver, CPS, or any social work related to abused or neglected kids. Slaughterhouse vet, could not handle putting animals down. Politician. Story 7. One of the toughest jobs I've ever seen, not in person thankfully, are the people in very impoverished areas who strip down to nothing, climb in the poop waste on holes, and clean them out at night. Story 8. Dentist or surgeon. Considering I fainted after cutting my leg shaving and had to lie down on the ground after seeing someone bleeding from a smallish head wound. TBF, I'm not sure I'd even call it a job I'd never do versus a job I would never be able to do. Story 9. ABA therapist. I've heard too many horror stories of people scarred for life because they underwent it, and I can't ethically say that I wouldn't make mistakes. At the lowest level, a registered behavior technician only needs a high school diploma and 40 hours of training. For neurotypical kids, a bachelor's is needed at the minimum for youth counseling, though most get a master's to be fully licensed to practice therapy. Story 10. I think you severely underestimate most people's limits when it comes to obscene amounts of wealth. I can't think of a legal, actually real job I wouldn't do, at least for a short time, if the pay was measured in even the tens of millions, let alone higher. I can think of actions I wouldn't do for any amount, but not proper jobs. It'd be too life-changing to not temporarily set aside my morals, values, self-worth, fears, dislikes, etc., etc. Now, if we were talking like jobs, I wouldn't do even for quadruple the top-end normal pay for that job. I'd list stuff like working with dying children or caring for old disabled people who can't do even the basics, or emptying abscesses. Some stuff is either too depressing, soul-crushing, or disgusting to be worth even quadruple pay. But for any price, I'd do even that stuff for at least a little while. Story 11. Drive up through the Napa Valley. No way am I bending over to pick them strawberries for miles. Machines cannot do that well enough just yet. Story 12. Parking enforcement. Your sole purpose is to narc on people on behalf of the government or private interest, making revenue for someone else and leaving you a soulless husk. I have extreme disdain for these people. Your life means nothing, and your job doesn't contribute to the greater good. Story 13. Medical representative. Specifically, I'm thinking of the reps that help surgeons. They are wholly dependent on there being a doctor that wants to use their product, a patient that is healthy enough for surgery and doesn't get canceled for some reason or another, and parts availability. If the surgeon goes on vacation, then that's days you're not getting paid either. And if the doctor switches companies or retires, then you might be out of a job because they don't need your position anymore if there isn't a replacement doctor to move you to. Even if they paid me $1 million a month, it wouldn't be worth the stress of, do I have a job today? Story 14. I have a mate who used to work doing videos for funerals. Doesn't sound too hard until you remember that not all funerals are for old people who died of illness. Some of them are kids, Some of them died tragically. Since having my own kids, I am very sensitive to the idea of little ones dying. Sure, the question posed in the post is a bit vague. Like, would I do funeral videos for $100 a week? Sure, but if we are being reasonable, it is not a job I would want to do. I don't want to put together slideshows of pictures of a 5-year-old who just died. No, not for me. Story 15. Anything involving child abuse investigations, especially if it involves any kind of sexual shit. You honestly can't pay me enough, even though I fully believe those people fighting for those kids' justice are seriously heroes. I don't have the heart. My brain would make movies. Anyone who does that line of work should be making bank for the kind of trauma they have to repeatedly witness and get to the bottom of. Story 16, Chef. I finished education for it and started to hate it while in school. I am now in complete different work, and I would never change my free time. Also, for a woman, at least where I am, it's so much harder to get recognition, and I just didn't want to waste my life on it. Story 17. My husband and I joke about this all the time. I'm a social worker, and he's a machinist. He said that there isn't enough money in the world to convince him to talk to people for a living. Meanwhile, if my boss ever asked me to do trigonometry for a work thing, I'd probably just sit on the ground and cry. Story 18, Garbage collector, or roadkill picker-upper. Honestly, anything to do with bugs. I think I can tolerate a lot more than I think I can, but I absolutely cannot be around bugs. At one point, my phobia was so bad I couldn't even watch A Bug's Life. Story 19. Nurse or personal support worker, nursing aide. I know a lot of nurses and PSWs, and they have extremely physically, emotionally demanding jobs that I don't think most people could handle. I'm not very good with people, or high-stress working environments, or odd working hours TBH. Even if I got paid 10x what nurses make in my country, I wouldn't do it because it would destroy my mental health and sleep schedule. Nurses and PSWs have my utmost respect and sympathy. When I spent 6 weeks in the hospital, it was the nurses that actually helped me heal, not the doctor that I saw once a week who couldn't even remember my name. Story 20, Government. I did it. I ended up having to sue the city for breaking the law, brazenly and repeatedly. I won, but sweet Cthulhu, never learn how the sausage is made. I'd never work in government again. Story 21, Answer ICE agent. For me, it would have to be ICE agent. These agents are human too, and many experience real emotional turmoil from pulling people away from their lives and communities. The masks they wear hide not just faces, but also a lot of internal conflict and stress. When they move quickly during an operation, it's often about containing a situation rather than being heartless. Story 22, Underwater welding. The illnesses and premature deaths those people experience are terrifying. The Byford Dolphin incident was all I needed to see. Decompression wasn't done properly, and multiple people got essentially vaporized from the pressure difference. Story 23. Probably a police officer or anything that comes with a similar level of power and responsibility. Frankly, I disagree with many aspects of the ever-changing legal system, and due to my strong sense of justice, I wouldn't be able to follow orders I was morally opposed to, no matter how good the pension and scheme is. I couldn't in good conscience claim to be an advocate for free speech, but then join a gang that arrests people for speech, for example. I'm sure other countries have a more trustworthy police force, but where I live, we don't see eye to eye on an awful lot, haha. Story 24. Pretty sure I would do just about anything for enough money. I would really suck at a lot of jobs, I'm sure, and would absolutely hate a lot of jobs, but money is a huge motivator. I don't mind dirty jobs, but something like a slaughterhouse would be terrible. Corrections officer would be terrible. I have horrible anxiety. Cop would suck, although I hope I wouldn't be an asshole cop. Customer service sucks because I have a difficult time understanding people and panic when I can't figure things out for them. Story 25, lol, it's some of the jobs I've had. Behavioral interventionist. I'm probably neurodivergent myself. It pained me to train a child in a way, in my opinion. You would a dog, maybe even more structured and less loving. I've seen a lot of autistic people that bemoaned how much they hated it, and they didn't think it helped them. Accountant. I can do math in my head way better than my boyfriend, who I met in an accounting class. It was also painfully boring for me. Story 26. Truck driver in the U.S. The thought of sitting and driving alone in my truck all day long on highways and city streets is horrific. I don't know how they do it. Kudos and respect to all of truck drivers out there. Story 27, proctologist. And the The police officers who have to knock on people's doors at 2 a.m. to inform them that their family member has been involved in a fatal car accident. I get that they are in theory trained to be able to deal with that trauma of being the bearer of the worst possible news to a complete stranger, but I honestly don't know how you can't ultimately be affected somewhere down the line, irrespective of how much you think you are coping at the time. Obviously, someone has to do that element of that particular job, but I really don't feel, whatever the money, I could carry out that particular job. Story 28, I used to do management consulting, and I was on of the teams where you basically end up coming in and recommending firing everyone. That was not for me. I didn't have to sit there and tell people they were fired, but we were looking to figure out who got fired. I moved to growth immediately. And at least in that situation, the business, it made sense. So working for Elon Musk's Doge, where you're firing people for zero reason in jobs that we need people in, that is not for me. Couldn't pay me to go fire all the employees who save lives and provide food to people. I'm just not doing that. It's callous and malicious and honestly for zero reason. Story 29. Any job that involves a lot of public speaking. I get incredibly nervous, anxious, and nauseated whenever speaking in front of a crowd, even a small one. No thank you. I honestly don't know how people do it. Story 30. Anything with heights. I would just faint. I am always amazed at the window cleaners on skyscrapers. I just couldn't. I get vertigo if I am in an apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows on the 20th floor. That's me standing inside 5 feet from the window. Story 31. I've refused high-paying leadership roles in companies dealing with gambling, which I've seen people addicted to and could never play a part in. I've also refused leadership positions in Dubai that would have been extremely high-paying because, well, I just don't want to be in Dubai. Maybe it's a low bar for me. I don't value a salary as much as I value family life and friends, and I get paid well enough anyway. Story 32, UK police officer. Used to be one, and it was the turning point where the police were being crippled by numbers, excessive use of forced claims, and diversity hirings. It was barely workable then, but now I wouldn't go back even for $100,000 a month. Not worth it. Story 33, selling cars. The way the whole process works is some of the stupidest bullshit imaginable. It's bad enough having to go through it as a car buyer, but having to be involved in it on a near daily basis would just suck all the way through. Imagine if we had to buy everything that way. Imagine if you walked up to the grocery checkout with a loaf of bread and the cashier had to go in back and discuss it with their manager first. Story 34, cattle breeder. They wear a long plastic glove and stick their arm up a cow's ass past their elbow in order to feel the exact right location to inseminate the cow's uterus. With the long semen tube, they simultaneously stick up the cow's vagina. Farmers pay top dollar for champion bull sperm. Story 35, washing the windows of high-rise buildings, apartments. My fear of heights could never allow me to do that. Like if someone had the cure for cancer and said you have to do it once or I'll destroy it, I'd have to think twice. Then I think I'd be negotiating to make it free for everyone if I completed the task without fainting. Story 36, retail pharmacy. The level of idiocy, ignorance, and hostility you have to deal with isn't worth it at any salary point for me. I used to work at Sam's Club, which had a pharmacy, and the hostility that I would hear people espousing towards the pharmacy staff was unbelievable. People don't understand how insurance works. They don't think that controlled substance laws apply to them. They don't understand the concept of co-pays, deductibles, why their medication costs more this month than it did last month, why their medications can't be refilled early, and countless other scenarios, and they take that ignorance out on the pharmacy staff. In my experience, this is especially true for boomers. They think the pharmacy staff is intentionally making their lives difficult, when in reality there are very strict laws they have to abide by, and they simply have no control over what your insurance covers and doesn't cover. Nor can they tell you why something does or does not apply to your deductible. It's on you as an individual to figure those things out, but older generations especially refuse to take any accountability and would rather scream at the top of their lungs at a low-paid pharmacy tech than do any sort of research to learn how things work. Story 37. Any amount of money possible, because if that's the case, then other than murdering babies or innocents or raping someone, I cannot name something I wouldn't do for $10,000, much less $1 billion or more. I would sign up for the actual Squid Games for $100,000, no questions asked. Story 38. No matter how much is a pretty outrageous statement, there are very few things that don't have a price, Like, yeah, there are some jobs I'd never work for a better paycheck than I get, but not matter how much? There's very little in this world that doesn't have a price. If you're telling me I can have enough money to be set for life for doing one job, I mean, hell, I can't think of anything I wouldn't do, unless the chance of mortality was so unbelievably high that my odds of dying while on that singular job were high enough. Like nothing you can do to prevent the death, not just hazardous. Story 39. You know we're talking about American kids, not of times of lore. These kids, F for these kids. Go see Minecraft with a theater full of them. They better thank their lucky stars there are laws against issuing backhand slaps, for the mouthy ones at least. Story 40, sales. I'm always told I have a great personality for it, but I just can't morally see myself trying to swindle people. I'd be too honest and tell them something sucks or they should be looking at something else or it's overpriced or whatever. Story 41, one that I know of is fast food, and the job I did more labor than most people realize. I had to carry heavy things, scrub food off stuff. I was working 2 jobs at the time, and I barely had time to finish that job. Not because I had 2 jobs, but it took me forever to clean everything. This description may not seem like a lot, but it really took more out of me than some people know, unless they've done it themselves. I worked at Carl's Jr. I don't remember my job being like that at KFC. Story 42. I worked as a ride op for one of the biggest amusement parks in the entire U.S. long hours. 10, 12 hours, even though you did 8 hours, you were expected to do an hour or 2 overtime a day. Horrible leadership and management with former high school dropouts who ass-kissed to get their position. Seen more horrific incidents in a 305-month period than I have seen in my life, and more stress than my entire existence, to the point I had severe insomnia. Managers abuse the points system to get rid of anyone they don't simply like on a social level, instead of work ethic. Got fired over an unlocked lock and me refusing to kiss a foreman for refusing to cut my lunch short halfway through it. Don't ever work for Six Flags Magic Mountain. Pay is great, the leadership is trash. Being fired from that job was one of the biggest wake-up calls and greatest thing that's ever happened to me, and made me realize what and will not put up with at a workplace from customers and staff. Wouldn't go back even if I was forced at gunpoint too. Story 43, cop or social worker. For mostly the same reasons even. It's hard to not emotionally take your work home with you. And both of those jobs would do that to me. I would get cynical and jaded, and I would rail at injustices. As a cop, you'd see people on their worst day all day, every day, and they would take it out on you. As a social worker, you would see people in terrible situations, and a lot of them would opt to stay in those situations. That would break me. Story 44, politician. You have a weird-ass schedule. Half the people hate you. If you're prevalent enough, there are people plotting to murder you. If you make a mistake on something, it can be catastrophic. And even if it's not, people will act like it is. Also, I feel like a lot of people get into it with the idea that they're going to do something great just to have to exist in a world of corruption that they end up having no choice but to participate in. I don't see how they can come out with their identity still in place. Story 45, waitress. I simply don't have the skill set at all. I have a great deal of respect for servers adept at their jobs. I would forget orders, not be able to take orders quickly enough. I have terrible balance, so trying to carry dishes would not be pretty. I would spill drinks on people, and I would not be able to control my spicy tongue in dealing with jerks. Story 46. Kid's doctor. They lie and say the kid is going to recover or get better, and they know the kid is just going to suffer the rest of its life and die, but the hospital built a new neo wing, and they have beds to fill. So tell the parents there's hope when there isn't. Story 47. This might not quite answer the question because it's a job that I've held previously, but I won't ever work in food service again under any circumstances. I wasted so much of my life grinding it out in restaurants. These last 2 years with the pandemic were the breaking point for a lot of food service workers, including myself. Story 48. I will never work a call center again. I did it for 2 weeks and quit. You essentially cold call people, and they hate it. 90% of the time, no one ever answers. 9% of people that do just yell obscenities at you, and the 1% that actually talks with you will hang up after finding out you're selling shit. Edit, oops, edited the wrong comment. Story 49, janitor, senior care, sewage. Got nothing but respect for those that do, but just no. Edit, getting a load of PPL saying how much they like their janitor or sewage jobs. Y'all keep saying once you get past the gross part, I get it. It's not a bad job. I got nothing but respect for those who do it. But it's too gross for me. Your particular job may not deal with much gross stuff, but when there is something gross, I would be the one called to deal with it, and I don't wanna. My grandmother used to be the janitor at my high school. She would tell stories of the absolute filth and sickened mess left behind by sick freaks for her to clean up, including but in no way limited to poop sculptures in or out of the toilets. Story 50, deep sea diver or welder. Wow, this blew up, thanks all. I'm 42 now. Maybe 20 years ago, I would have thought about it, LOL. But of all things in this time in my life, that would be the one. I'd rather change light bulbs on one of those crazy high cell towers. Story 51. Fucking wash and worry you when wash. Sales that are advertised as customer care, informing, etc. I'll try sales, but don't try to sell it to me as something else. Looking at you, every charity organization, cop or anything military, I'm the wrong person for it and I want nothing to do with it. Literally a lose-lose situation. Influencer, my private life is private. Story 52. Carer or teacher for people with disabilities. My sister is nonverbal and has severe autism, and I see the stress my dad has to go through every day as her carer. It's hell for him due to the lack of control in his life, isolation and lack of time for friends and hobbies, no time with my mom, looking after a physically aggressive, naughty child who can't understand boundaries or concepts like waiting in a grown woman's body, but he does it because he loves her. I couldn't imagine doing it for strangers just for money and to earn a living. Story 53. As fun as it sounds, a streamer or vlogger, yeah, they can make tons of money, but you're constantly on camera and have to watch every word you say. It takes the fun out of games if you're streaming that because it makes it a job rather than a hobby. Not to mention all of the ridiculous drama and rumors you have to deal with or dodge. Story 54. Therapist or any sort of mental health. I'm not cut out to listen to people and help them work through things. I'm too bossy. I want to tell them how to fix it and have them do it, not deconstruct their feelings and help them work their way to their own solution. Story 55. Prison guard. You're in prison all day. Without exception, everyone I've met who is a prison guard is a rude asshole. I know someone who went in all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about changing the system from within, who is now a POS standard issue asshole prison guard. Story 56. I'm willing to do it because I'm jobless, but I think dishwasher is one of the worst, most available jobs you can have in an urban setting right now. Why? It is one of the worst paid, less respected, and stressful jobs, in a direct way. Basically, no one can do a thing if you are not fast enough because the cooks needs their stuff and the tables need theirs, so do waiters. You work the longest even in your job. You are always working as you are, at least here. Usually a jack of all trades, clean the bathroom, the seiyun, help the cooks, take out the trash, bring heavy stuff from the storage room. I have worked 13 plus shifts without even a break to eat something during events. You are always on your feet, not a good thing for that long. And with your back slightly bent forwards, which destroys your lumbar area. You are constantly with your hands on the water and waste and chemicals. So you end up psychologically, physically, and economically destroyed with no real benefits. Story 57. Painter and decorator. I started trained to do it on the job and was good at it, but all around it's just a nightmare. The negatives just aren't worth it at all, keeping in mind most of these are personal experiences and living in a rural community. Work for someone, enjoy seeing them charge extortionate amounts of money and pay you minimum. Dealing with a house which hasn't had TLC in years, good luck convincing the homeowners to let you buy the proper paint. In relation to 2, enjoy letting the homeowners source their own paint, then throwing a hissy fit 12 months later when patches, shinakuri, stains bleeding through moisture peeling show your WWE starts occurring. Enjoy having to do easy, simple repairs before you can paint. Then enjoy local builders getting pissed and telling everyone you're a jack of all trades. Enjoy the gardeners, honestly gardeners, when you're painting their boss's property. Prep time is literally the worst. If you're doing it right, expect the prep to take up about 90% of the job time. Working on a new build with the laborers? Enjoy being hackled at because they think you earn more money than them. Also enjoy piece of food like bacon rind being thrown at you. Luckily, this one isn't from personal exp. Enjoy losing out on paydays at a time because the weather is shit so you can't work outside. Speaking of weather, nothing is more heartbreaking than doing some glossing outside and unforecasted rain starts. That's an extra day of coming back, redoing the prep, then repainting. Hidden asbestos, that's a fun one. By far my greatest way to piss me off, and I'm never picking up a paintbrush again. Line, mates rates. Once people know you paint professional, it's regularly, "Oh mate, can you pop over and do this quick room for me? Cash in hand." Mates rates, yay. I've once given in and agreed to do it cheap for someone because I've known them since we were 4, and it was for her mother. Entire room, selling, patchwork, glossing the works. Done it in 3 nights, got paid $20. So I don't do mates rates anymore. In fact, when I'm asked to do it, I ask for the room dimensions and what quotes they've had so far. Then tell them that quote is cheap. I'd set you back plus $200 on whatever the price because I do it properly. Anyways, that's May rant. Saw the question and it all came flashing back XD. Story 58, nursing. It seems to be a very easy go-to for most women to fall into. The pay is usually good and the training is pretty fast, but you literally could not pay me enough to with other people's bodily fluids. I could deal with blood and injuries and stuff, but if puking and pooping and mucus are involved, no, literally couldn't pay me enough. Story 59. Waiter, servers, or anything serving the public food and or drinks. People are animals at restaurants and bars. You're not a server. They treat you like you're their servant. People in hospitality are treated like shit for no other reason than their job is to try and make you happy. So they don't yell back or call you out on your shit. I always felt so bad for servers on Sun for breakfast or lunch. I literally stopped going to places on Sundays. I find that people who are obnoxiously drunk are infinitely more respectful than the average Sunday church crowd. They are seriously, without a doubt, some of the most entitled, bigoted, and disrespectful people God ever created. Honorable mention, nurses, especially ER, ICU, NICU, etc., where you deal with a bunch of people every day who need urgent care or are stuck in the hospital for an extended stay, and you work 12s on a regular basis, that, for so many reasons. Story 60. I don't know what it's called, but my dad used to collect deceased bodies. It broke him. He had to be on call 24/7, but it was going as expected until he had to pick up a 9-wire. That's when he really lost himself. Up until that point, he was just like you would expect a person to be when they work at any hour of the day the moment they require you to. Dead tired, that is. Something snapped when the kid happened. He never returned to his old self either, even though he got fired shortly after. They promised him better pay than what he received and even signed for it. He spoke up about it. They didn't like that. The moment I heard about what happened, I noticed something was off, but he never spoke about his work. I wasn't surprised to find out the truth. Many years ago, a crowd formed next to some water in our neighborhood, so he stopped the car to see if he could help. The crowd was trying to save a kid that fell in the water earlier. The moment he saw why the crowd formed, the kid passed away, right as he looked at the kid. He slowly walked back to the car and left. I knew something was off by the way he held his body, but I was only 12 or something at the time. This man has endured so much that it pains me to see how this world treats him. I wish I could give him what he deserves. Story 61. Any social media moderator. I cannot imagine the amount of disturbing things they have to see every day. Edit. Wow, apparently is not as bad as I was expecting. I guess watching a video about Facebook moderators made me lose faith in humanity. Story 62. Law enforcement officer. That's an incredibly difficult role that would just not be good for my personal state of mind. I have so much respect for police officers, and I'm saddened that many, including several Redditors, stereotype all law enforcement officers as being bad. I also stand up for Black Lives Matter, by the way. We do have a problem in tolerating, and sometimes even encouraging from within the ranks, police officers who don't represent equity or justice. Story 63. Funeral services. I got an interview and then the talk of the commission on coffins, etc. came up. I left. I just couldn't picture upselling death. I have an okay relationship with mortality and thought I would be good at helping people through a difficult time. But profiting off their love felt wrong to my core. Story 64. I'm a paramedic and I actively discourage anyone from doing this job. While it can be rewarding at times, it's not worth the crap we have to put up with. We are grossly underpaid for what we do, touted as heroes by municipal government and our management, but are never treated as such. Vacation and time off constantly denied. Where I work, we do 12-hour shifts, but routinely work 13+ hours without any sort of break or downtime. Not to mention, a lot of our patients are just plain unpleasant and demanding. Thanks to COVID and years of being underpaid and underappreciated, we are bleeding staff faster than we can hire. and the new hires are generally bottom of the barrel or had their education in ride-out neutered because of COVID safety protocols. This job isn't worth it anymore, and until things change, no one should come into this profession. Story 65. The President of the United States. No privacy for you or your family for the rest of your life. At least half of the entire country despises you. No matter what you do, everything you do is watched under a microscope. Vicious insults and threats hurled toward you and your family. No free time, practically non-existent sleep schedule, literal body-altering level of stress, etc. No thank you. Story 66. I've worked at skilled desk jobs for big corporations my entire life. The low-level shit jobs most people here are describing are indeed horrible, but the one close to me that I couldn't stomach is human resources, HR. It involves too much deceitful behavior. HR presents itself to employees as their friend and backer, but that's a lie. HR's goal is to make sure employees don't become a problem and to eliminate them if they do. The interests of the corporation and management are paramount. This involves lying to employees about pay grades, chances of promotion, imminent layoffs, etc. The only times I've seen HR do something to back an employee against someone higher in the hierarchy, regardless of how unfair or unjust they were, is when the higher-ups' actions were actually illegal and could subject the corporation to legal penalties. Even then, HR would prefer to engage in cover-up if possible, most often by inventing reasons to fire the employee raising the complaint. I couldn't stand the dishonesty and will never take that job. Story 67. Join the military or work for an arms company. I might to a degree be unavoidably implicit in injustice by virtue of global supply chains, though no way am I working for a company or organization that has killing as a fundamental part of its operations. I genuinely prefer jail to joining the military if the UK ever brought in a draft. Story 68. Waiter. I remember my mom telling me, decades ago when I was in high school, about a customer who complained that the yolk was broken on her fried egg and demanded a new plate of food. My mom took that plate away, scraped the uneaten food into the trash, and brought the woman a new plate with unbroken yolks. This B% looked at the food for a few seconds, nodded once, then picked up her fork and chopped the egg into little pieces before starting to eat. I was furious on my mom's behalf for this woman's behavior, and I know I can't do that job. Story 69. My ex was a teacher for severely autistic students. I don't know how she did it. She was spat on, got her hair pulled, got food and feces thrown at her on a daily basis. These kids would never grow up to become normal adults, but they could one day learn to better control their impulses, and that's why she did it. She saw happiness in every small progression, an angel. I could never. Story 70. I would rather work the most boring, number-crunching job than ever do food service again. I don't care how boring and soul-crushing sitting in a cubicle all day is. It's leagues better than being kicked around by the most entitled customers on the planet and being expected to smile the entire time. All while being paid minimum wage and having to learn how to do at least 3 jobs at once. So you can be ready to replace any employee in the establishment on a dime when they go on break, so call in sick. Story 71. All things considered, pharmacy, particularly retail pharmacy. School is very expensive, so you have the student loan debt to contend with after you graduate. You are generally underpaid, especially as a new grad, and unappreciated. And it's a profession that is slowly dying and being roboticized. Story 72. School bus driver for middle schoolers. I retired from teaching this age, so I know them only too well. Most are fine, but those that aren't are horrid. Littler kids are mostly cute and compliant. HS kids are in a coma in the morning or just want to get home in the afternoon. Middle school kids have very little understanding of cause and effect, no frontal lobe for judgment, and rarely step up against their peers to stop idiocy. I was astounded towards the end of my career to see the default action when seeing trouble is to start the camera rolling. The driver's number one job is to drive safely and deliver them where they need to go. Instead, poor parents stock the bus with entitled shits, kids who have never seen calm, rational behavior to copy, or kids desperate for attention, for good or bad behavior. Usually the driver is the sole adult, outnumbered by kids, often not respected by authorities as a responsible adult, and has to clean up after slobs, monitor unsafe behaviors, and address it appropriately while keeping their cool, accurately report details of any incident, real or imagined, and get paid an insulting amount. The only buses with middle school kids that behave well are those with juniors and seniors also riding with them. Often all it takes is one big kid to speak up and tell them to knock it off, disturbing their sleep, and things settle down. Over 22 years of teaching this age, loving it, and no way would I drive them anywhere. Story 73. I'm a caregiver right now, and the man I caregive for has Parkinson's, and I know it's going to tear me apart watching his decline. For my career, I'm going to college to be a special education teacher. But as for a job I wouldn't do, I couldn't work in the medical field despite kind of working in it right now. I couldn't be a doctor or nurse. It would be too hard on my heart and body. I also really feel bad for emergency room personnel. I have various health problems that landed me in the emergency room various times, and I think their jobs have made them callous, to the point they almost treat patients like they're faking or exaggerating. But I understand it's compounding trauma. You put a wall up because you mentally cannot handle all this terror coming at you at once.